It was the fall of 2022 when my wife, Harper, and I finally decided we needed a night out. Our daughter, Luna, had just turned 2. We didn't have family nearby, and our friends were all busy with their own kids, so we signed up on Sitter City and started combing through profiles. After an hour of scrolling, one name kept popping to the top: Evelyn. Late 20s, soft-spoken in her video intro, dozens of 5-star reviews. Parents described her as calm, reliable, and especially good with toddlers. She'd worked with high-energy kids before, which definitely applied to Luna. It felt like the safest option we were going to find from a stranger on the internet. When Evelyn came over to meet us, she matched the profile perfectly. She knelt to Luna's level, asked her questions about her toys, and had her giggling within minutes. She reassured us about bedtime routines and said she was used to staying late if we needed it. By the time we left for a colleague's dinner party, I actually felt relaxed. We checked in once by text around 9. Evelyn wrote back quickly. Luna was asleep. Bedtime had gone smoothly, everything fine. I remember telling Harper how good it felt to be out without worrying. That feeling didn't last. Driving back around 11:30 p.m., as we turned into our neighborhood, an unease I couldn't explain settled into my stomach. I told myself it was just garden variety parent paranoia. The house was dim when we pulled up. No TV background noise, no quiet hummed song from Luna's room, just stillness. I told Harper I'd go in first. Evelyn was in the living room scrolling her phone. She stood when I walked in and gave a small, quick smile. Luna slept peacefully in her crib. On the surface, everything looked normal, but there was a tightness in Evelyn's eyes, like she wanted to be gone already. I thanked her, paid her, and told her we'd walk her out. She insisted she could let herself out and started gathering her things. Something about the way she clutched her bag stuck with me, but I shook it off as fatigue. I did my usual circuit of the house, habit more than anything, checking doors and windows. That's when I saw it. The guest bedroom window was cracked open half an inch. We almost never used that room. I was sure I'd locked all the windows when the weather turned colder. I closed it, latched it, and stood there a second too long thinking, was this like this before? We had a basic camera system, more for porch pirates than anything serious. I pulled up the app on my phone and scrubbed back through the evening, half expecting to see nothing. At first, it was just Evelyn tidying toys and walking through the living room. Then she disappeared out of frame toward the hallway. The next clip from the bedroom camera made my stomach drop. Evelyn stepped into our room, not the guest room. She closed the door behind her, then started opening drawers. The angle wasn't great, but I could clearly see her rifling through my dresser, then Harper's. After a minute, she picked something up, studied it, and slipped it into her bag. I rewound and watched again. It looked like one of my watches, a mid-range one I'd left on top of the dresser. Not insanely expensive, but not cheap either. My hands went cold. I switched to the kitchen camera. A little later, there she was at the back door. She looked out the window, slowly unlatched the deadbolt, and opened the door a crack before closing it again, this time without locking it. I stared at the screen, suddenly aware of how quiet the house was with Evelyn still inside. This wasn't just a sitter stealing a watch. She'd unlocked an entrance that we had locked. I had no idea if someone was already outside or planning to come later. I called the police with my voice shaking, explained we had a babysitter in the house, a toddler asleep, and footage of suspicious behavior that looked like she was preparing for someone to enter. While we waited, Harper sat in Luna's room watching her sleep, and I stayed in the hall with one ear on the stairs and one on the front door. Evelyn stayed in the living room, scrolling her phone like nothing had happened. When the officers arrived, they came in quietly, separated us, and asked Evelyn to open her bag. Inside, they found my watch and a few smaller items, jewelry Harper kept in a dish on her nightstand. Confronted with the camera footage, Evelyn insisted she'd only gone into our room looking for a blanket and somewhere comfortable to sit, that she'd picked things up absent-mindedly and forgotten to put them back. She didn't have an explanation for why the back door was unlocked or why the bag had been tucked under her jacket. They arrested her anyway. Even as the patrol car pulled away, I couldn't shake the feeling we'd interrupted something that wasn't finished. That half-open guest window nagged at me. Why crack a window in a room no one used? Why unlock the back door and then stay? The police couldn't tell us if she was working with anyone else or if they suspected a larger pattern. We never saw Evelyn again. No follow-up calls, no neat resolution. For weeks after, every creak in the house made me sit up in bed. I kept replaying the footage in my head. Her going through our things, her hand on the back door lock. It felt like we'd come right up to the edge of something a lot darker than a petty theft. And for the first time since Luna was born, our own home didn't feel like a safe place to be. I'm writing this on a quiet Sunday in March 2025. Nearly 2 years after the night I nearly quit my diploma and flew straight back to Cape Town. The memory still nudges me awake whenever I study late, so I'm laying it out the way I'd tell a friend, plain, just what happened. In late May 2023, I was 26, a South African scholarship student grinding through a postgraduate economics diploma at Dublin City University. Exams were in the first week of June. I needed top marks to land a decent job and start sending money to my parents and 2 younger sisters back in Khayelitsha. I shared a split-level flat on Richmond Street with Liam Donnelly, an Irish computer science major who color-coded his life with sticky notes. That Monday night, he'd gone across town to revise with his mates Kevin and John, leaving me with the kind of silence I liked. Just before midnight, I brewed my 3rd mug of instant coffee, paced the lounge with a binder in my hands, the TV on mute, and the curtains glowing orange from the streetlights. Every hour I dropped for a few push-ups to keep my brain awake. A little after 12, a dull thump landed directly above the living room, like someone had dropped a heavy bag on the floor upstairs. The building was an old Georgian conversion, so I was used to random creaks, but by that hour the place was usually dead quiet. I waited for a follow-up bang. Nothing came. Eventually I shrugged it off, blamed a neighbor moving furniture, and went back to game theory. About an hour later, another thud rattled the light fitting, heavier this time. I grabbed my phone as a torch and climbed the narrow back stairs to our unused storage room. The door was still locked, the carpet dusty, windows latched. I called a tentative "hello" into the dimness. No reply, no footsteps, just the faint hum of traffic and my own pulse. Annoyed at wasting precious cram time, I went back down. Around 3 in the morning, exhaustion finally won. I lay back on the sofa with my textbook open on my chest and must have drifted off within minutes. A hand gripped my right shoulder and squeezed hard. I jolted up with a shout, half ready to swing, and saw Liam standing over me, palms raised. My heart was pounding so hard I could taste metal. Then I saw them. 2 stocky men hovered in the lounge doorway. Both wore dark hoodies and cheap paper dust masks. Their hands were buried in their jacket pockets. Liam, looking nervous, said that Kevin's neighbor's flat was under loud renovation, and the lads needed somewhere quiet to sleep before an exam. He gestured toward the masked men as if they were his friends. 3 in the morning, indoors, wearing dust masks. It felt wrong, but I was too fried to start an argument. I muttered something like, "Yeah, fine," and shuffled to the kitchenette to get water. By 20 to 4, my brain had checked out. The last clear image I have is Liam spreading a spare duvet on the carpet, while the 2 strangers sat cross-legged by the radiator, saying nothing. Next thing I knew, white pain exploded at the back of my head. I'd fallen asleep on the sofa. Now I was half on the floor, eyes watering, ears ringing. 2 figures loomed above me, the same hoodies, the same masks. One clutched my old laptop bag. The other had my wallet and Liam's Canon DSLR he'd left on the shelf. I croaked Liam's name. One of them barked something through his mask, a sharp order to stay down. A boot nudged my ribs in warning. Then pounding footsteps, the slam of the front door, and silence, just the fridge humming and my own ragged breathing. Darkness rolled over me again. Sunlight dragged me back. My head throbbed. I would later learn I needed 2 stitches to close the cut. Upstairs, the storage room door that had been locked the night before now gaped open. Inside, Liam lay on his side, wrists and ankles cinched with plastic zip ties. A length of TV antenna cable looped around his middle. A sock jammed in his mouth turned his panic into muffled noises. I grabbed the box cutter we kept for parcels and sliced him loose. As soon as he spat out the gag, he blurted, "Those aren't Kevin and John." Hands shaking, he told me what happened. After I'd nodded off, the guests had asked where we kept extra blankets. When he turned toward the closet, they jumped him, dragged him upstairs, and ripped off their masks. Liam swore he'd never seen them before. Mid-30s, both with shaved heads, accents he couldn't quite place but not local. They demanded valuables and PIN codes, told him they'd come back if we went to the Gardaí, then zip-tied him and left him in the storage room while one tore through drawers and the other headed downstairs. After they hit me, they'd locked the front door from the inside and tossed the key back through the mail slot so we couldn't chase them straight away. Paramedics at St. James's cleaned and glued my scalp and told me I was lucky. It could have been far worse. Garda officers took our statements. They'd taken my passport, Liam's camera gear, 2 watches, my laptop, and the stack of cash I'd scraped together from weekend bar shifts. Strangely, they'd ignored our bigger electronics. When Gardaí phoned the real Kevin and John, everything snapped into focus. Both had been in County Clare since Saturday for their grandmother's funeral. There had been no study night. Whoever those men were, they'd used the name simply to lower Liam's guard. Forensics found nothing useful. The dust masks were cheap, the kind sold in any hardware store. The CCTV covering Richmond Street had been down for maintenance that week. By late afternoon, the detectives admitted leads were thin. The report logged it as aggravated burglary by unknown males. We took a carbon copy with an incident number, more for paperwork than comfort. We swapped the lock cylinder, installed a digital deadbolt, and mounted a budget motion camera over the stairs, paid for on a credit card I'm still paying off. For the rest of exam season, I couldn't cross the lounge without scanning every corner. Liam couldn't sleep without a podcast murmuring in his ears. Most nights that summer, I replayed one detail Liam mentioned, the shorter intruder's shoulders shaking as if he were laughing while tying Liam up. Not angry, amused. Like he'd run this routine 12 times already and was happy to be on number 13. The Gardaí never called back. 5 weeks later, my passport turned up in a postbox near the Dublin port tunnel, the photo page trimmed out. Everything else was gone, probably sold the same day. I scraped through exams. In October 2024, I finally wired my parents enough euros to fix the leak over their bed. Yet every step forward takes me back to that hand clamped on my shoulder, to 2 strangers in paper masks walking into our flat and walking out with slices of our lives, unseen, untraced, and almost certainly ready to do it again somewhere else. Before we get into the next story, if you're new to our channel, take a moment to subscribe and tap the bell icon so you'll know when more of these stories go up. Sharing them with friends and family really helps us keep going. I started at Pomo's Pizza in September 2022. I needed the job. Home was suffocating. My stepmom, Diane, didn't have to hit me to make me feel unwanted. Constant digs about being lazy, not worth much, how I'd turn out just like your real mom who'd left when I was little. I just needed somewhere else to be at night. Delivering pizzas wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet. I liked driving with music up and a hot box next to me. The tips weren't great, but they kept gas in my car and bought me a couple of hours of peace. This was a Thursday night. I remember because I had school the next morning and was hoping for an easy shift. The shop was slow, just me, the cook, and the girl up front. Around 9:30 p.m. an order came in, medium pepperoni, cash on delivery. The address was about 10 minutes away, a single-story ranch near where new houses faded into old farmland and woods. I pulled up just before 10. The street was dead. No porch lights, no movement. I double-checked the address on the receipt. It matched. I grabbed the pizza, walked up and knocked. Nothing, no footsteps, no muffled voices. I knocked again, waited. Silence. I figured someone was hunting for their wallet or in the bathroom. I stood there another half-minute and knocked a third time, louder. "Pomos," I called out. Still nothing. I was about to pull out my phone to call the number on the ticket when something shifted in my peripheral vision. The curtain on the front window, just to the left of the door, twitched. Not much, just a small movement like someone had pinched it to peek out and then let it drop. I leaned sideways, trying to see in, but the interior was dark. The only light was a faint blue glow from deeper in the house, probably a TV. 2 minutes went by. I started to think prank order. I turned halfway back toward my car, planning to call the shop and cancel. Headlights washed over the side of my car. 2 police cruisers rolled up without sirens. One stopped across the street. The other pulled right up behind me, close enough to block me in. I froze on the porch, pizza box in hand. The older officer got out first, late 40s, moving like he'd done this 1,000 times. He slid gloves over his hands as he walked. The younger one popped the trunk of the cruiser and pulled out a shotgun. My mouth went dry. The older cop stopped halfway up the lawn. "You delivering here, son?" he called. "Yeah," I said. "Medium pepperoni." No one's answering. He looked at the front door, then back at me. "There won't be any deliveries tonight," he said, voice flat. "Go back to your car, stay there." I didn't argue. I walked back, slid into the driver's seat, set the pizza on the passenger side and locked the doors. In the rear view, I watched him climb the porch steps while the younger one circled around the side of the house, moving low. I found myself staring at the window again. The curtain drew back. This time I saw part of a face, just one eye and a slice of forehead, staring directly at my car. It didn't blink, didn't move, just watched. Then it vanished. The cops didn't kick the door in. They didn't shout police or anything like that. Everything happened slow and quiet. I sat there for what felt like 20 minutes, hands on the wheel, trying not to think about the shotgun. Eventually, an unmarked car pulled up. A man in plain clothes got out, talked briefly with the officers, then walked over and tapped my window. "You're good to go," he said when I cracked it. "We'll call your boss, head back to the store." I wanted to ask what was going on, if I'd done something wrong, if someone was hurt, but he was already walking away. Back at Pomo's, my manager frowned when he saw the untouched pizza. I told him exactly what had happened. He checked the ticket. "They never called here," he said. "No cancellation, nothing." Then he pointed at the printed number. It had too few digits, fake. He let me clock out early. I went home but didn't sleep. The next day I scanned the local news. Nothing. I checked again the day after. Still nothing. No mention of a police presence on that street, no arrests, no incident. A few days later, I poked through our delivery records from that night. That address had never ordered before. There was no customer name. The system showed the order had been typed in manually, not placed online or from a phone. No email, no working number, just the street and house. Sometimes I think about that curtain moving, about the stillness of that eye, about how the cops showed up with gloves and a shotgun before I even had time to call in a no answer. Whoever was inside that house had been expecting somebody. I'm still not sure it was supposed to be me. This happened when I was 7, in a quiet suburb in southern Pennsylvania. It was mid-October. The leaves were perfect shades of amber, and the air always smelled like chimney smoke and wet wood. I just started 2nd grade, and for the first time, my parents were letting me walk home alone. It was only 3 blocks. Mom worked from home and usually stood at the window waiting to wave when I reached the corner. That tiny ritual made me feel older than I was, like I was doing something important, even though my backpack probably weighed more than I did. That Friday, I was heading home as usual. I traded my peanut butter and jelly sandwich at lunch for Doritos and a Twinkie, so the sandwich was still in my lunchbox, swinging from my hand. Everything felt normal until I turned onto Ridgewood Drive. One house up ahead had a yard sale. I'd never really noticed the place before, an old sagging two-story with ivy curling up the porch posts. Tables were scattered across the front lawn with blankets, books, and random trinkets spread out like a tiny junk shop. A small wooden box caught my eye. Dark wood, brass corners, a little latch on the front. I still don't know why it drew me in. I wandered over. That was my first mistake. The man sitting behind the table was thin, too thin. His clothes hung off him, and his hood was pulled up even though the sun was out. His skin was pale and blotched. His lips were cracked like he'd been out in the cold for hours. What I remember most were his eyes. They looked like they were pointed in the right direction, but not really attached to anything inside. He didn't speak when I picked up the box. I turned it over in my hands, tracing the carvings and the letters burned into the bottom. "CH, how much is this?" I finally asked. When he did answer, his voice didn't match him. It was strangely high and cheerful, like a kid's TV host, but there was something underneath it that felt wrong. $3, he said, but you gotta promise to keep it closed. Why? I asked. He smiled. Too many teeth. Some things aren't meant to be opened, he said. They bite. I half laughed, thinking he was trying to be funny. At 7, it's hard to tell the difference between someone being creepy on purpose and someone just being creepy. But his smile stayed stretched too wide. His teeth were almost too straight. I reached into my backpack for my little coin pouch. Before I could unzip it, he snatched the box from my hands. "No," he said, "not today." We just looked at each other for a second. I didn't know if I'd done something wrong. Then he leaned in. His back bent in a way that shouldn't have been possible, like his spine had extra joints. His face came so close I could smell his breath, hot and sour. "You shouldn't be walking alone," he said softly. "Bad things happen to kids who don't listen." Fear dropped through me like a stone. I turned and ran, lunchbox swinging wildly, backpack thumping against my spine. I didn't stop until I reached the end of Ridgewood where my street began. As I ran, his voice floated after me, calm and conversational. "See you next time, little man." When I got home, Mom wasn't at the window. She was on a work call in the kitchen. I almost told her everything. Then I imagined her saying I couldn't walk home alone anymore, that my newfound freedom was over. So I swallowed it and said nothing. That night I had a nightmare. In it I walked past that same house. The box was sitting open on the table. Inside were teeth. Not plastic fangs, real teeth, yellowed and slick with blood at the roots. They chattered and snapped at the air like they were hungry. I woke up crying. Still didn't tell Mom. On Monday, I took a different route home that detoured around Ridgewood. On Tuesday, curiosity tugged harder than fear. I walked past the house again. The yard sale was gone. No tables, no blankets. Just a patchy lawn and a porch light flickering in the middle of the day. He was there, though, sitting on the porch steps, hands in his lap, staring straight ahead. When I passed, he slowly stood up. It was like watching a shadow peel away from a wall. I didn't wait to see what he'd do. I ran. That's when Mr. Salter appeared. He was our next-door neighbor, retired military, the type of guy who ran drills with his dog in the yard. He drove a battered pickup and always had some tool in his hand. That day, it was a shovel. He saw me running and stopped me with a hand on my shoulder. "You okay, sport?" he asked. I nodded out of breath and pointed back. "That guy, he said weird stuff. He scared me, Mr." Salter didn't say anything at first. He looked over my head toward the porch, then back at me, eyes narrowing. "Go home," he said. "Now, don't stop till you're inside." I listened. I never found out exactly what he did or said to that man. By the next day, there was a for sale sign in front of that house. A week later, it was empty. Mr. Salter never brought it up. Neither did I. Years later, when I was in high school, I asked Mom if she remembered the guy on Ridgewood. She said she vaguely recalled hearing about a man being arrested for harassment, but details were fuzzy. No one seemed to know who he was or where he'd come from. It was like he'd appeared and disappeared between one fall and the next. Sometimes I still think about that box, the carved initials, the way he snatched it back, whether there was ever anything inside it at all. Maybe he was just a deeply strange man preying on kids' imaginations. Maybe it was something darker. But every October, when the air smells like wood smoke and the leaves turn that same shade of amber, I think about that walk home. And I never, ever cut down Ridgewood Drive. This happened in the summer of 2018, the year I was about to start 8th grade. I went to a sleepaway camp in the Appalachian Mountains that I basically considered my second home. No school stress beyond a bit of summer homework, cabins full of friends, and days built around sports, crafts, and late-night whispers. I got along with almost everyone. Almost. That summer, we had a new counselor named Art. He looked to be in his 50s, white hair, lined face. Most of the counselors were college kids, early 20s at most, so seeing someone his age wearing the same staff t-shirt felt off to me right away. When our bunk first met him, though, he seemed fine, helpful even. He'd pitch in with chores, ask how our days went, sit with anyone who seemed homesick. For the first week, we didn't really question it. Other girls did. Around campfires and in the dining hall, I heard whispers. He's a creepy old man. Bet he preys on kids. Harsh words, but I couldn't totally dismiss them. He was definitely older than everyone else, and there was a stiffness in his smile I'd noticed too. Things really flipped on a recess night. We got a free block to do whatever we wanted. My bunkmates and I chose tennis. Under the big floodlights, we goofed around more than we actually played. The whole time, Art stood outside the fence watching us, not casually, staring. He had a huge grin plastered on his face, too wide, almost cartoonish, like Pennywise without the makeup. I remember thinking, why is he watching so closely? Part of me tried to be generous, to assume he was just glad we were having fun. It didn't stop there. A few days later, after evening showers, I came out of the stall wrapped in my bathrobe. On the sink sat a can of shaving cream. I was just hitting puberty, no real facial hair yet, but I was curious. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. Strong fingers clamped down on my arms. I spun around and saw Art. His face had none of that fake warmth, just a hard, angry look. "Listen to me, you little punk," he hissed. "I'm not going to have you touching my belongings." Got that? Everything happened so fast I barely processed his words. I just blurted, "Why, yes." "Good," he said. "Don't do it again or I'll make you regret it." I bolted out of the bathroom, still dripping, heart pounding. No one else in the bunk seemed to have heard. I felt embarrassed and weirdly guilty. I didn't tell anyone. I just avoided him as much as I could. By the end of that first week, I was counting the days until I could go home. Then came the night that nearly made me leave early. It was a Tuesday or Wednesday in the second week. Our bunk was walking back from movie night, flashlights bobbing on the trail. It happened to be Art's night off, and for once that made me feel relieved. We settled back into our cabin. Maybe 15 minutes passed. Then we heard them screams from somewhere across camp. Not one voice. A chorus of high-pitched, panicked shrieks like 10 little girls all screaming at once. The noise lasted maybe a minute, then cut off. The 3 counselors on duty in our cabin exchanged looks. 2 told us to stay put. They'd go check. The 3rd stayed with us while we sat on our bunks, whispering and staring at the door. An hour and a half crawled by. The 2 counselors didn't come back. Whatever had happened, it wasn't small. Eventually, the one with us said it was lights out. He turned off the main bulbs, flicked on the nightlight, and told us to get some sleep. We lay there wide awake, waiting for answers. We got them at breakfast. We could sit anywhere in the dining hall, so I grabbed a table with a couple of my bunkmates. Some older girls slid into the seats around us, faces pale and animated. One of them leaned in and told us what had happened. In one of the younger girls' cabins, they'd heard noises in the bathroom, rustling footsteps. Their counselors were outside talking, so a few of the girls went to check. When they opened one of the stall doors, they found Art, sitting on the toilet, pants around his ankles, fully exposed. He smiled at them and said, "Hey, pretty girls." They screamed and ran straight into the woods. Those were the screams we'd heard. 2 counselors chased them. Others, including 2 from my bunk, rushed into the cabin. They found Art still there, still exposed. 3 male counselors tackled him and held him down. Somebody radioed the camp police and explained the situation. By the time the officers arrived, Art was still pinned to the floor. They put him in a patrol car and took him away. The younger girls from that cabin were too shaken to sleep there again. They were spread out among other bunks for the rest of the session. The story spread through the dining hall like wildfire. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Conversations died mid-sentence. My chest hurt thinking about those girls, what they'd seen, how their fun summer now had this burnt into it forever. I went back for one more summer after that. Nothing even close to that scale happened again. Art never returned. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up in some kind of institution or locked up for a long time. Honestly, that's where people like him belong. It started because I needed to make room in my apartment. Sunday morning, May 15, 2022. I was still settling into a small one-bedroom near downtown Columbus, Ohio. My parents had just downsized and passed on some furniture, including a large antique wooden cabinet. It was beautiful, solid, heavy, probably worth decent money. It was also comically oversized for my place. I decided to sell it on Facebook Marketplace. I wiped it down, took a few decent photos, and posted the listing around noon. Within minutes, my inbox lit up. Most messages were the usual low offers and "Is this still available?" spam. One stood out. A guy named Derek messaged almost immediately, offering full price without trying to haggle. He only asked if he could come by that afternoon. 2 hours later, he was at my door. Derek looked mid-30s, jeans and a dark jacket. Polite, easy small talk. He examined the cabinet more carefully than most buyers do, opened every drawer slowly, ran his fingertips along the inside surfaces, measured the interior spaces with his hands as if checking for exact fit. At the time, I just thought he was very particular, maybe a collector. He said it was exactly what he was looking for and handed over cash. He had a small truck outside and insisted on loading the cabinet by himself. Every time I offered to help, he waved me off. Looking back now, that insistence feels odd. Back then, I was just glad to have the floor space back. The next couple of days were normal. Work, unpacking, nothing unusual. Then Wednesday evening, driving home, I noticed a white sedan in my rearview mirror. At first, nothing special, but it stayed behind me. Mile after mile, every turn I took, every lane change, it matched me. After 15 minutes of that, unease started to crawl in. To test it, I made a few extra turns I didn't need to make. The sedan followed. When I looped around a random parking lot, it finally broke off and continued straight. I told myself I was being dramatic. Cities are full of cars going the same direction. The next night, I left work late and drove back to the apartment. Parked across the street was a dark SUV with tinted windows. The engine was running. Someone sat inside. I went upstairs quickly, locked the door, and tried not to think about it. By Friday, I'd seen different cars fall in behind me several times. Never the same vehicle twice, always dropping away when I tried to be sure. It was subtle, but not in my head. Someone was tracking my movements. That weekend, I called my friend Matt, who works in security. I laid everything out. "Check your car for a tracker," he said. The idea made my stomach twist. Matt came over. We went over the car inch by inch, under seats, in the wheel wells, under the bumper, inside the engine bay. Nothing, he frowned. "You bring anything new into your place recently? Furniture, electronics," I thought about it, the cabinet, but that was gone. "Anything he handled and you kept," Matt pressed. Then it hit me. When Derek had examined the cabinet, he'd spent a long time on the smaller interior drawers. One of those had been removable. After selling the cabinet, I'd kept that drawer to use as a little organizer in my apartment. We tore through the things Derek had touched or opened. When we flipped that shallow drawer over, we found it. A tiny black device, smaller than a quarter, taped neatly to the back edge. A GPS tracker. Matt turned it over in his hand and nodded. "That's your problem." I called the police. We handed over the device plus Derek's marketplace profile. The officers seemed concerned but told me straight, without more, it'd be hard to prove his intent. Maybe he wanted to steal the cabinet back, maybe something else. Within days, Derek's profile disappeared. The name, the picture, the account, all gone. Weeks went by, no updates, no arrest. I changed my locks, put up cameras, and even replaced my phone. I double-checked every shadow on the street. The quiet that followed didn't feel like safety. It felt like waiting. A few months later, on an ordinary Tuesday, a small package arrived with no return address. Inside was a single item, one of the old brass drawer handles from that cabinet. No note, no explanation, just a reminder. He knew exactly where I lived, still, and he wanted me to know he hadn't forgotten. The police had nowhere to go with it, no name to run, no profile left to trace. I still live in that apartment. The cameras are still up. The replacement handle sits locked in a box I wish I could throw away but can't. Because if I did, I might convince myself this was over. And I know it isn't. We thought we were just going for a walk. Nothing crazy. Just a late-night trek to the next town during winter break, so we could say we'd done something different. The only way there without hitching a ride was a service tunnel that ran under the highway bridge. Crossing the bridge itself felt like asking to get clipped by a drowsy driver. The tunnel, dark and grimy as it was, seemed safer. There were 7 of us: Logan, Carlos, Julian, Dylan, Bobby, Josiah, and me. Our phones were nearly dead from streaming music all day. Logan had about 5% left, but even his screen was too dim to help for long. We ended up using disposable lighters as we walked, flicking them on and off. Little orange dots bobbing in the long concrete throat beneath the road. Halfway through, I realized something was off. There was a shape walking ahead of Logan, picking its way around old beams and chunks of debris. The person wore a gray puffer coat. Whenever the lighter glow hit the jacket, it crinkled like thin plastic. At first, I assumed it was Carlos. He owned a jacket like that. Then I heard Carlos behind me, joking with Bobby about slipping on the wet floor. We didn't say anything. Each of us just noticed. It was colder in the tunnel than outside. Our breaths came in little white clouds. Trucks rolling over the bridge above made the whole place groan, which might have masked any extra footsteps. But the feeling was there, an extra presence, like finding one more stair than you remember on the way down. When we finally emerged on the far side, the moon painted the crusted snow silver. Logan turned and counted heads out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He frowned. Not to freak anyone out, he said, but I swear someone else was walking in front of me back there. Full-on person. Didn't one of you go ahead for a bit? Carlos and I answered together. We saw him too. Julian laughed at first, thinking we were messing around. His smile faded when he realized we were serious. He, Dylan, Josiah, Bobby, and Logan insisted they'd only seen our group of 7. No extra shadow. We hurried up the hill toward town. Our sneakers soaked through. Toes went numb. We hoped to find a late-night gas station or cafe to thaw in, but the streets were empty. Behind a discount store, a row of big metal storage containers squatted in the snow. Someone joked we could hide in one to escape the wind. Bobby found an old axe head, all rust and no handle, and we did the stupid thing and tried to pry a padlock open. An older woman on a nearby porch spotted us and started shouting. We scattered. There was a narrow gap between one container and a chain-link fence. We squeezed through single file, backpacks scraping metal, and popped out into someone's yard. From there, we darted through bushes, cut across a line of thin trees, and ended up by the local middle school. New plan: use the outdoor outlets near the cafeteria to charge one phone and order pizza. We didn't get that far. A night security guard's flashlight swung across us the second our shoes crunched on the icy ground. He yelled. We ran. Logan vaulted the first fence like an Olympic hurdler, arms windmilling so wildly that Dylan shouted, "Bro looks like a cartoon cowboy." We all laughed, even while running for it. I dropped my phone at the second fence. Bobby, still clutching the axe head, stopped to help me dig it out of a drift. That cost us time. By the time we reached the tree line, the others were gone. We followed their tracks along a narrow road and onto a half-frozen trail. Moonlight filtered through low clouds, turning everything dull and gray. The footprints ended near a maintenance shed at the edge of the woods. The building was small, with faded siding and security lights glowing dimly through fogged windows. Logan, Josiah, and Dylan lingered in the trees. The rest of us, me, Julian, Bobby, and Carlos, stood nearer the path. Julian and I edged forward to peek. As we rounded the side of the shed, something stepped into view near the door. In the dark, at first all I saw was bulk, then shape. A dog, I thought, a huge dog. Its back stood level with my waist. It moved with a heavy, deliberate gait, too big for any pet I'd ever seen. I spun and yelled, "Big dog, huge dog," without thinking. Julian tried to turn and run, but his feet went out from under him. He slid across the snow on his side like a baseball player stealing second. We burst out laughing until he looked over us, back toward the shed. All the color left his face. Without a word, he scrambled up and bolted down the trail faster than I'd ever seen him move. Snow kicked up behind his sneakers like smoke. I shouted after him, trying to sound brave. "Dude, we still have an axe." Before I finished, Logan's group vanished deeper into the woods. No explanation, no shouted warning. That's when instincts took over. We all broke in different directions. Branches slapped our arms. The path disappeared. Only the dim sky through the treetops told us which way was out. Eventually, somehow, we regrouped at the mouth of the same tunnel we'd used earlier. Our phones were completely dead now. Dylan had 2 lighters left, both half empty. He paused at the entrance, flicked them on, and set them burning on a low concrete rail that covered a maintenance hatch. "Left a little light for us," he said, "so we can find the tunnel again if we have to turn back." No one commented until we were deep inside. Then Logan stopped walking. His voice bounced down the concrete cylinder. "Wait, you lit lighters in here and left them at the entrance." Dylan repeated himself, confused. "In a closed tunnel," Logan said slowly, "gas can build up. One spark in the wrong place and we'd be." He made an exploding gesture. The wordless kind of fear hit me. The kind that squeezes your lungs. We ran the rest of the way, dodging the same unseen beams and trash we'd avoided earlier. The tunnel's echoes made it sound like something was chasing us even when it wasn't. When we burst out the other side, the cold night air felt like a blessing. Nobody said anything. We just listened to our own breathing. Back at Logan's place, socks steaming near the heater, the house suddenly felt small. Julian shook so badly his teeth clicked. Every time we asked what he'd seen by the shed, he opened his mouth and then closed it again. Logan did most of the talking, laying out everything. The shadow in the tunnel, the giant not quite a dog, how all 3 of us had seen something ahead of us underground that half the group swore wasn't there. Dylan and I backed him up. Bobby, Carlos, and Josiah admitted they hadn't seen the 8th person clearly, but had heard extra footsteps that didn't line up with ours. We tried to sleep, but every house creak sounded like snow compacting under heavy paws, or like one more unseen footstep falling behind 7 others in a tunnel. A year later, summer of 2024, curiosity finally beat caution. The snow was gone, the days were long, and everything felt less threatening in the sun. Only 4 of us went back: me, Julian, Bobby, and Carlos. The woods looked normal. No weird tracks, no bent branches. Birds chirped, mosquitoes whined. The maintenance shed had been fixed up, new siding, clean windows, a fresh roof. No fogged glass, no strange lights. We walked a slow circle around it. No scratches on the door, no massive paw prints, no chains, nothing. Whatever had been there that winter night was gone, if it had ever been there at all. Still, as I stood in the warm grass, the hairs on my neck lifted the same way they had in that tunnel. Not because anything was watching us now, but because memory can weigh more than the moment itself. I heard Logan's voice in my head as clearly as if he were beside me. "Dude, that's no dog." And just like that, the summer fell away. I was back under that bridge, watching a gray coat move in front of us where nobody should have been. Back by the shed, gripping rusty iron in one hand. Back listening to lighters hiss in stale air. The shed might be new, the snow long melted, but that night hasn't gone anywhere. It still walks with me, an eighth shadow pacing just out of sight, counting 7, then 8, then 7 again. I don't know what really shared that tunnel with us, or what waited by that building. Maybe it was just fear twisting ordinary things into monsters. Maybe it was something that likes following groups of kids who think adventure is always harmless. All I know is this: when I flick a lighter now, the tiny flame doesn't feel warm. It feels like a warning glowing in the dark, reminding me that some stories don't stay where they happened. They follow you home.